most of these social media messages clean. Speaking on her YouTube channel, she said she keeps things private online because people are so mean.
I just think it's so toxic, social media, and it's really sad that these generations are growing up thinking that it's okay to say things like that, and you get it all the time. Oh, I didn't think she was going to see, I didn't think she'd reply, but why are you doing it?
Great Britain have won another gold medal at the Tokyo Olympics, their 12th of the Games. Sailors Dylan Fletcher
turn right onto Dover Road
over the line in the 49er race. Elsewhere, there was heartbreak for sprinter Adam Jamili, who pulled up injured in the 200 metres heats. And three-time Olympic champion cyclist Ed Clancy has withdrawn from the Games due to injury.
continue for 1.5 miles.
In the city, the FTSE 100 will reopen at 70.81 after closing up 49 points yesterday. The pound buys $1.39 and €1.17. The weather, many areas starting dry, chilly with some mist for some, warming up with some sunshine this morning, but scattered showers by the afternoon. A high of 22 degrees. From Global's newsroom, I'm Simon Conway.
We've come a long way in the fight against COVID-19, and thanks to all our actions, we can now enjoy many things we've missed. But the virus is still with us, so we should all carry on protecting our friends and family. Let's remember, meet outside if you can, and let fresh air in when you're inside. Wear a face covering in crowded places, check in when you're heading out, and do keep testing regularly. Let's keep life moving. Find out more at gov.uk/coronavirus.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Nick Ferrari at breakfast with Tom Swarbrick.
Just gone 7. Hello, good morning, and welcome to the show. Tom Swarbrick in for Nick Ferrari at breakfast here on LBC. Hope you find you very well indeed. Coming up,
we have an issue here with people who go into prison for ideological crimes, essentially. There's got to be this process of understanding better how de-radicalisation works.
the Streatham terrorist shot dead by police was allowed out of Belmarsh prison despite continuing to have extremist views, and police directing the prison to hold him for longer. They refused. Why was he allowed out? We'll discuss. Also, they're in most part of our lives anyway at the moment, so why not let the government in to help your marriage? State-sponsored marriage guidance will be offered to keep divorces out of the courts. Is that a good use of taxpayers' money? And
the police have named the 5-year-old boy at the centre of a murder investigation in Bridgend. I'm LBC's Peter Gillibrand with the latest from South Wales.
new details emerge as the investigation into the death of a 5-year-old found in a river in Wales continues.
Call 0345 60 60 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast with Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
Very good morning to you. We start with
LBC travel
good
actual
news.
web. One lane's closed on the M25 anti-clockwise just before
Or we start with Joanne Webb's travel. It's one or the other. The pink-demic is set to ease after the government eventually changed the dreaded app to mean that fewer people will be asked to isolate. Not that you have to isolate anyway, of course, but the government says the logic of the app will be amended, which is nice to know that it may have had some in the first place. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has now ditched the idea of an amber warning list for foreign travel as he gets into a war of words with the Chancellor about who is trying to save summer more vigorously. There are now Tory MPs who want the amber list ditched altogether. And the best piece of good news this morning is that the data on hospitalisations is falling even after the country took restrictions off on July 19th. Hospital admissions are going down. The data is suggesting that we may have peaked at this wave, that despite the warnings of summer chaos coming as a result of the lifting, the number of people in hospital with COVID is coming down. Now, it may change again. We're being warned that winter is going to be very tricky. It may well be. But are we now in a period where we might tentatively say that we've broken the back of this, that we have moved out of the COVID health crisis, that there is currently no health justification for things like vaccine passports or the threats of them? Or would that underestimate the current threat from COVID, and that your view is there that there should be more restrictions even now and cases are still far too high. We'll come to your calls in a moment. We'll speak to the former head of health statistics at the ONS as well. First, LBC's political editor Theo Usherwood joins me live. Theo.
In recent weeks, businesses have been hamstrung with workers off, family reunions cancelled, holidays postponed, and all because of the NHS app, which has pinged millions of people telling them that they have been in contact with someone who's tested positive for COVID and they need to self-isolate. Only last week, PM told LBC he would stick
In a quarter of a mile, keep right to continue towards Tons Lane, A355.
August the 16th is nailed on. There's never been any question of a review date for August the 16th. We'll go ahead with the move.
So what is it that worries you? Cases? Deaths? I think what's unusual as yet undetected strain.
Keep right.
I think what it is just I'm very pleased that the roadmap that we worked on for so long as the British public, everybody worked on together, has delivered.
but now we have a concession from the government. It comes 2 weeks before that.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London, Heathrow Airport.
Previous 5 days and ping those individuals, telling them to self-isolate. Now the app has been changed so that if you test positive, it will only ping your close contacts for the previous 2 days. Tom, Dr. Jenny Harries is the new chief executive of the Health and Security Agency. She said the changes were well needed.
If they isolate, they will prevent passing on infection to those closest to them. But we recognise that there needs to be a balance between the impact that has on people's lives whilst balancing that with public health.
Now, on the travel front, there had been, the government had planned to introduce an amber watch list. That would basically mean that if a country was placed on the amber watch list, we're thinking of countries like Spain, Italy, Greece, you could go on holiday there.
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
To the red list, and you would need to either get back in time before it met that red list, or you would need, with your family, to go into a quarantine hotel for 10 days. It was likely to cause significant disruption. Yesterday, however, Boris Johnson gave his strongest hint yet that he was dropping that plan.
On travel, we've had to balance it because of the anxiety that a lot of people have, and I have, about importing new variants and bringing back the disease. But also, they want badly to go on their summer holidays to get the travel industry moving in our city centres. And again, let's hope it's an approach that is as simple as we can possibly make.
The key point there, an approach that is as simple as that needs to make the case that that watch needs to be simple and viable. It's not going to happen.
Interesting.
21st, and we saw rapid rise in cases in older people. But remember, older people were double jabbed now a couple of months ago, so the link between the two. So just taking NY2 as an example, whatever the number of cases there were in, say, younger people aged 20 to 24, the same rate would be about 60% for, say, like 60% of the same rate for older people. But that was down to 10%, and that's probably a vaccine effect. So we've got the effect of older people not catching it as much as in the past. And if they do catch it that seriously, remember with the hospital admission, the NHS England published some data last week as well, showing us now that about 1 in 4 of the people who are going into hospital aren't actually going in with COVID. They've just actually got COVID and they've gone in and tested for other things. So I think the purpose of the app as well, the Welsh Government this weekend are allowing people to not have to self-isolate if they double jab. In England it'll be the following week. So I think we've got this vaccine effect now. We've got to learn to live with the virus, and if we can get through the winter, there's very little flu in the southern hemisphere at the moment, so there's no risk potentially of a flu epidemic this winter. Hopefully we can learn to live with it and not go into the default having a lockdown when we start seeing cases going up.
Jamie Jenkins, your health commentator, former head of health statistics in the Office for National Statistics. Thank you for your time. Let's come on to the app element. 7:13. William Lees-Jones, the CEO of brewery and pub operator JW Lees. Thank you for your time, William. How bad has the pingdemic been for you and your pub, sir?
Thank you, Tom. It's been awful, and I think for a lot of businesses, this is an existential threat. This is a threat that actually means those businesses might not carry on. And frankly, the app, and you go way back to when they did the first tests in the Isle of Wight, it's never been fit for purpose. We're now at a position where 2 weeks you've been double vaxxed, you don't have to isolate. But the problem we have is that 30% of the people working in hospitality are young, so they won't be vaccinated, certainly not double vaccinated. So
yeah, and I was going to, sorry to interrupt, I was going to say that the fact that it is having an effect on your business and many other businesses means this tweak is going to see fewer people picked by it. Does that mean that you're going to recommend to your staff that actually they should come into work despite having been picked and they can just get a test or something?
Basically, the app is a multiple advice, and the big difference is here you have the haves and have-nots. So you've got the haves, academics, who've been on full salaries. You've got the have-nots, I think, to all the government, and they can't be able to work, and that's very clear on there, that's very discriminatory. It means that for our teams, literally on a daily basis, and we're moving people around, we're saying we're not opening lunch, we're not opening our premises on a Monday or Tuesday. This is a really, really big problem, and I think that the app, statistic last week, it pinged 700,000 people. That's ridiculous.
But the other thing I don't understand, William, is the government suggests that in the data that they brought out yesterday, that around 60% of people pinged isolate. There's absolutely no way they can know that. There's just no way. From how the app works, there is no data that can be produced that I've seen that can show that it has worked, definitively worked in getting people to isolate if they've got it or if they come into contact with it.
And this is the point, because this is Project Fear, that there's a number of people who downloaded the app, deleted the app, we've been using apps for years for marketing purposes. The government don't really know what they're doing, and for me that's the problem. It's a problem of how you manage data. And yeah, there are a number of people who come on the Olympics, they've been paid, they're going to get paid to stay at home and sit at home watch telly. But there's other people who really want to go to work because they need to earn something.
I wonder if that balance is going to start shifting and employers are going to start saying to people, right, we really need you to come in even if you have been pinged by the app. William, thank you. William Lees-Jones, your CEO of brewery and pub operator JW Lees. So if it's the change to the app, if it's the dropping of the amber quarantine or the amber watch list, which we'll come on to in a moment, or the data that suggests that hospital admissions are now falling despite the country reopening, to your mind, are we now through the health crisis brought about by COVID? And I think that as much as we talk about long COVID and the health implications of it, very, very serious, to me there is a bit of a psychological long COVID here. There are plenty of people who are still incredibly worried about this, incredibly concerned to the point where they will either decide to limit their lives in ways in which we all had to do as part of a lockdown, and will, for whatever reason, and if you're one of these people, I'd love to speak to you this morning,
In 2 miles, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
49er race at the Tokyo Olympics. The weather warming up with some sunshine but scattered showers later, a high of 22 degrees.
LBC travel line due out with delays on the M25 anti-clockwise from junction 16 at the M40 to 15 at the M4. And that was after an accident. The motorway had to close briefly. It's all open now, but it's still very slow. The A12 though remains closed southbound between junction 16 at Gallywood and 15 at 3 Mile Hill because of an ongoing police investigation, and there are long delays from before junction 17 at Howell Green. In Watford, there are delays in the A41 eastbound from the Dome roundabout to the M1 junction. That's following an accident. And in Harrow, Headstone Road stays closed both ways following a burst water main.
This is LBC.
Somewhere around there is a motorway to park down there. I have been out with a photocopy of this misbehaving. A seat on the rush hour bus. A colleague has also made an extra shift, a payday treat, and a well-earned Saturday off. You could find all this in a job that you never knew was out there. Search Job Help, the government website that can help you discover support, training and advice in finding your next opportunity. Job Help will help you find it.
LBC. Euronics is the home of electricals and the home of expert advice from people you can trust. It's what we're great at. When you come and see us in one of our over 600 local stores, you'll find great offers and great prices on great products from leading brands like Bosch, Neff and Siemens. So when you're looking for where to find that next great product, come and see your local electrical experts. Visit us online to shop or find your local store at euronics.co.uk.
We can all do our bit for our environment. You can now recycle soft plastics like crisp packets and prep bags at Co-op. All you have to do is clean it, scrunch it, and Co-op it.
In a quarter of a mile, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
Which plastics you can recycle with us, just go to coop.co.uk/soft-plastics.
This is the sound of solicitor Jeremy bossing his invoices with Sage.
Exit at junction 3.
Invoicing, bossing. Try for free at sage.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Let's get our COVID-19.
In a quarter of a mile, at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the 3rd exit onto the Parkway, A312.
Way to protect yourself and others. And remember, you need your second dose after 8 weeks. Go to nhs.uk/COVID vaccination to book, or visit your local walk-in centre. The sooner, the safer. Every vaccination gives us hope.
If you're wondering what you can do with your pension pot, this could be how you're feeling. That's the sound of worry and uncertainty, but you could be hearing this. Let's call it the sound of clarity, which you can get from PensionWise. PensionWise is a service from Money Helper, a government organisation providing free, impartial guidance. In just an hour, you'll get clarity on all your options, so everything feels less and a little more. If you're over 50, discover the power of an hour and call 0800 144 8944 or search PensionWise from Money Helper.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast with Tom Swarbrick on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Morning to you, 7:21 is the time. Tom Swarbrick in for Nick Ferrari at breakfast here on LBC. We'll bring you details of the tube strike, the massive tube strike that was due to go ahead this week. It has now been called off, but the dispute continues. The threat is still there. We'll speak to our reporter who's at Charing Cross Station. I see the front page of the Daily Mail, though, continues our theme of the good news that is coming on COVID, whether it's the ditching of...
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway.
Having been tweaked to make sure fewer people are now being pinged, or the data which says that COVID cases are lowest for a month, that hospital admissions from COVID is falling to...
Continue on the Parkway for 1 mile.
This morning, pings can only get better. Boris Johnson staging a dramatic double U-turn on COVID last night as cases continue to fall amid growing concern that the vaccine rollout is being squandered. He acted to ease the pandemic and scrapped plans for a new travel alert level. This amber watch list, which was signed off at the top of government a week or so ago, has
approach that is as simple as we can possibly make it.
It doesn't feel very simple, does it, if you have to try to navigate it? Julia Lobu-Said is CEO at Advantage Travel Partnership, the UK's largest independent travel agent and travel management company consortium. Thank you for joining us this morning, Julia. Why was this amber watch list proposed in the first place, do you think?
I think the government, clearly from a travel industry perspective and from a traveller point of view, have been looking at all sorts of different scenarios to enable the travel industry to be able to restart and resume. But I think there has been a very overcautious approach, and one of the things that we haven't seen really up until now, and we're talking about the first week in August, is to really get hold of the success of the vaccine and to truly ensure that travel can resume and it can resume safely around the framework of the traffic light as it was intended. So I think there's a combination of being overcautious, really not looking at actually how can we truly benefit from the vaccine dividend, how can we truly allow Brits to travel as they are across the world, and possibly a realisation that actually the rest of the world are already travelling and we've been left behind.
I have to say I've lost count of the number of levels there are now in this traffic light system. I think there's green watch list, amber, France and red. How could the government simplify it?
The government needs to have, when the framework was first introduced, it was green, red and amber. Whatever we feel about that, whether it could be two colours, one colour, it's quite straightforward. It means what it says on the tin, and as you quite rightly say, the different shades that have currently come in out of nowhere without proper consultation have just confused a system which is already complex.
It is, but I have to say I'm not quite sure what amber means. Does amber mean get prepared to go if you like, or does amber mean...
In a quarter of a mile at Wagoners Roundabout, take the second exit and stay on the Parkway, A312.
Squander the advantage conferred on us by this brilliant vaccine rollout. Get rid of amber, just red or green.
Well, that's a really good point. And if you look back up until a few weeks ago, if you were fully vaccinated, amber still meant you travel as like everybody else with the 10-day isolation and your 2 tests on return. Now, if you're fully vaccinated, amber is green. If you're fully vaccinated, amber is actually green. So arguably, back to your first point, there's actually another shade in the traffic light system for those that are vaccinated. So if you look at a very simple we have a 2-tier system now. You're either vaccinated or you're not, and the different rules. You're fully vaccinated and you're going to what is deemed as a low-risk country. Actually, you should be travelling.
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway. Continue on A312 for 1.5 miles.
Vaccinated. Well, that is arguably where there should be some restrictions in place, as there are now.
Just finally, do you think that the long-lasting, long-term change that is going to come to your industry, to the travel industry, is that life is going to be easier for you to travel if you are double jabbed?
I think we're seeing that already, and I think government have made it quite clear that that's the route they are intending to take us down. So yes, that certainly is something that we do believe is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with and work towards.
Good to speak with you. Thank you, Julia Lobu-Said, your CEO at Advantage Travel Partnership, the UK's largest independent travel agent, travel manager.